So, Saskia, you were, well, who doesn't know you, sincerely? Everybody knows you. You are a top lady. You were a CEO of Ericsson and before that of Bull. You're the digital champion for Belgium. It's been so much time that you're advocating for the transformation of society, for having more women in IT, in science in general. What do you think about the preliminary results that I've presented of the survey? What do you think about that?
Just to hiccup on the last presentation, now we have another study proving that it's needed. Now, after proving, I would like to have some doing. And that is maybe an indirect answer to your question. I think we've done a lot of good things, but it goes much too slow. And it's maybe also an indirect, if I had a dream, I would even be more disruptive and more direct in what I'm saying.
Even more complicated. Huh?
And there is a good reason for it, and that's also a business reason. We cannot make our results anymore if we do not succeed in getting inclusivity, in getting a culture, and in getting diversity. The financial models are at the end. We're pulling on an elastic. We can still make the quarter and the next quarter and maybe the dividends and maybe the next elections, but then it's over. So the people are tired. There is not working neither. The organizations have to be flat organizations, otherwise it doesn't work. We do not find the right talent anymore. So we are at a little bit 12 minus 5. And if we do not hurry up, we will have a very difficult period coming forward. Now, normally I'm always an optimist, so maybe some people will be surprised about it. But it is clear that we need to change the culture in organizations. And it's very difficult to do it while flying the plane. I do understand, but it's possible and it's needed. At the other hand, I can only insist that you continue for your next 13 years to make people more CEO of their own life, and women more CEO of their own life, and women more daring to speak up to the men in blue suits and brown shoes. I'm lucky today. It's not because if we do not speak up in a respectful way, then we will not. Who talked about speaking time? Then we will not be listened to. And I think the daring to speak up will make organizations smart, will increase not only the intelligence but also the emotional quotient. And I think that will be the only solution to change drastically our economy without having a war.
Without having a war.
Because normally, if we have a war, then everything is disrupted and we are obliged to restart. And now we do not have, and let's hope we do not have a war, but it doesn't oblige us enough to start doing things different now.
Okay, fine. How did you do that when you were in charge of these two multinationals? How did you do that? Because when we discussed, you were not there. You are part of the steering committee for the survey. You were not there when we analyzed the first results, and we found out that we had to give that statement of how to build that work, life, learn environment. I know that you did that. How did you? What kind of practices can you share with the audience?
So the first word is appreciative understanding. People need to understand that everybody is different, but we need to understand in an appreciative way. And it goes
humility.
It goes empathic behavior. It goes understanding. I know we do not always agree, but that doesn't put me in a defense mode anymore. I recognize. I appreciate your value adds. You appreciate mine, because that's the liberty of both. And if you can appreciate everybody's difference, that's the first understanding. I do realize you're different, but I accept it. And that's valid in culture, that's valid in generations, that's valid in gender, but that is a critical one. If you do not succeed in changing your culture in a way of appreciative understanding, it's not worthwhile going further. Second point is a little bit what was mentioned also in the last presentation. People need to learn to dare again. I've worked a lot in multinationals. We have created a culture where people do not dare to do anything anymore. They have been punished for taking initiatives. They have been punished to put good ideas on the table. They have been punished to speak up. They're still being punished to speak up, by the way. But anyhow, and that's people say, okay, now I'm going to be laid back. And the average staying period of a CEO, Dominique, some exceptions, are between 3 to 5 years. So, okay, I can survive. And then, so we need to create the dynamic out of the organization. It's what I call the entrepreneurship. People need to dare doing things again and to speak up. And then the last point is you need to make a dream. People, we need to put a flag. Where do you want to go to? And that is not only CEO of your own life. You need to develop your second skill set. I can valorize you as an employee with the competences you have today, but you also need, as a CEO of your own life, to develop your skill set, which will you need tomorrow. And I can help as an employer. I can create an environment, but like I said to the last organization, I've got already 5 kids. I can't take 500 more. And that was also a very tough discussion with the social partners, because they still live in the fact that the employer is responsible for the training of the employees. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot make it. So everybody needs to be CEO of their own life and take up what are the competences which I'm going to valorize locally going forward.
It's a common responsibility for sure. Patrick Callewaert, you're leading the consulting technology practice in Deloitte, Belgium. And you have said that you have to act as an evangelist in order to have more diversity in your teams, because you had a aha moment that you shared with me with the founder of Salesforce, because Salesforce is at least the founder of Salesforce is really known to have more diversity, and there you understood that performance was directly linked to diversity. So what did you do in order to change? Because consulting companies are very male-oriented environment, not easy like law firms, very, very difficult for women to thrive in. So what do you do as a leader?
So, yes, I'm a pure product of, we say, the old style of consultants, and I had the opportunity indeed to meet Marc Benioff something like 10 years ago, and I asked him the question, how do you drive innovation in your very large organization and being so often recognized by a lot of newspapers as the most innovative company? And Marc made me, I would say, a very nice opportunity to say, join us in our office. And I went to their office and I was surprised by how they translate this notion of innovation, creativity in their day-to-day life. When you walk through the different floors and offices they have, you see diversity everywhere. And of course, we start diversity by gender diversity, but it's just not at end state. It's also about gender diversity in terms of background, in terms of nationality. So when I came back to drive indeed the tech practice in Belgium with the ambition at least to double the size of our business a few years ago, we said we have some challenge, and I think all the statistics demonstrate that today we have a challenge in terms of diversity, at least in gender diversity. We were at something like 15% of a woman in our team. And if we look to the challenge we have about becoming, I would say, one of the consultants about digital transformation, we say, okay, what are the key elements of this digital transformation? It's all about data, and we all know that. And my mother is a statistician, so I'm fully convinced that women are much more, I would say, skilled for helping us to cope with this challenge. It's all about putting user experience in the middle. And if 50% or 50+% of the population is composed by women, we need to be sure that we are able to reflect that, not by just having UX designer, the traditional way, but also creating this diversity in our studio and team. And third is about reimagining the business model of the company, how technology will change the way companies are evolving on the market. And to create this innovation, having always the same type of people will not help us. So I really have been inspired by this visit at Marc Benioff's office, and I say, let's open Let's open a discussion. And like you say, it's a different step. So the first step that we have done, and I thank my chief of staff for that, is we make, I would say, a moment where we realize the urgency, the need for change and the urgency. So we make a picture of our leadership, and we realize not only that the gender was not respected, but also the type of profile we had was not correct. So we use the MBTI or the business chemistry to really see that. And then we say, we will drive our change by, I would say, having a more balanced leadership, having a more balanced team to grow our business. And it took us something like, I would say, 2-3 years to really make the awareness at all levels. And of course, it starts from the leadership, and those moments is extremely important. But after that, declining that into our organization and be sure that some male behavior will disappear. And it takes a little bit of time. And then, and that's what we are currently busy, we launch plenty of initiatives, because during the moment of awareness, we agree that it's not just a program that we can launch. This is not going about launching this action and then it will be solved. No, it's about launching the movement, being sure that all those initiatives will guide us to a new reality. We are convinced that this new reality is there. We don't know exactly the journey, but we know that we need to launch plenty of initiatives to help our people to be protected, to help our people to find solutions, to help our people to avoid some behavior. And like you said, each of us, we need to be the CEO of this transformation. I don't have the magic formula about this new world. What I have is the power to help the people to take their destiny and move forward with this new new
and
challenge.
the power to lead by example, which is so important. And Dominique, this is how you transformed your organization. You said that, and everybody can agree on that. That the previous your predecessor was completely different. This type of leadership. So you managed to transform the organization thanks to your behavior, lead by example. When I introduced you, I said something about humility. I like that word because humility is really very powerful. I think it's not a weakness, it's very powerful. But okay, so you managed to transform your organization without putting targets, quotas, and so on and so on. But when you will leave the organization, I hope it will be in 20 years' time, but but at a certain point it will happen. So how can you embed that cultural change in order that it can continue?
I think it's a good question. I think cultural change, you need to start, but it's success when it is really taken in behaviors.
Yeah.
And once you have that not as a culture, but as in the behavior of the people and a new way of working, I think then you succeed. And then I can leave and it will stay in the company. I think we are not yet there yet, but we are close to that. And that's why in a journey like cultural transformation, we have, if I can explain in 2 minutes, we have done a lot of different steps. First, starting indeed to have a clear sense of purpose. Where do we want to go? What is the vision? What are the values we want to have? Really doing a lot of exercise about awareness of your behaviors towards others in terms of cultural leadership. Then trying to reinforce that in culture and feedback, and the whole coaching and feedback, and the whole feedback loop is very important because you don't see if your behavior and other people sees it. And I always say it's such a pity that when you are grown up, you don't receive feedback anymore. We give a lot of feedback to kids, and that helps them to grow. We should continue to receive feedback when we are grown up. So we try to have a culture of feedback. And now we have done recently what we call a reinforcement session, nature-led reinforcement session, where we put people in groups in the nature, and they really see how they behave. And it's their own experience in group, and that has helped again to trigger the change from a culture into a real embedded behavior. And so it takes time, it's a journey. I know we have had a discussion about gender diversity and why don't you have quotas and things like that. I can tell you that after our discussion, so you see you have a big influence on me. After our discussion, I went to our HR director and I said, I don't want to put that as a quota, but I think we should have those, and we should really monitor them and make sure that we monitor how many women in the leadership team, that we are sure that on every succession plan we have at least one woman, which are stuff that we have. How many women do we hire every year? How many women do we have in our ALD program? And that will now all be monitored, and we have an objective.
Exactly.
So it's not yet a quota or a target, but it's at least an objective, an ambition. We will monitor it every year. And so, because you tell me, if you are gone, who will do that? And I said, that's probably true. So now it's written, it's in the procedure, it's in the systems, and we will monitor it. So as from last week, we changed that.
I think she deserves an applause, absolutely. A tricky question, Alexander, I'm sorry. Huh? But what about inclusion in the Council of Ministers? What about empathy in the Council of Ministers? And what about collective? So it ends with collective intelligence. We need a very high IQ in the Council of Ministers in order to help us to go through that such difficult time. What?
I agree. And I think that, and I write it in my book quite openly. Definitely from an ideological perspective, I felt less at home in the previous government than in the current one. Still, I think that the decision-making system we had was better in the previous one. And one of the reasons was that, I think, my experience is that if you take the restricted cabinet, you had women around the table. And the ones around the table were definitely not the easiest ones. I mean, Lorette and Joël are not the easiest persons to discuss with, especially for me. But if I compare it with the current table, which is a male-only table, it's a different discussion. And I think all of us know that. Is it in the decision table of an organization, or it's the school board of your kids? We all know that if you have only men around the table, or you have a mixed table, it's a different discussion. And you take different decisions. And a male-dominated table is a table where you discuss based on hierarchy. And I am bigger than you, so by definition, I am right. And
patriarchy.
It touches on the study that was presented. We take better decisions, and we better handle risk, especially when we are more diverse. I think there's a great quote by Christine Lagarde, who said, you know, we would be in a different world today if it were Lehman Sisters instead of Lehman Brothers. And I think that's right. I think that especially in the financial industry, you have a dominance of men in decision power, and we just handle risk and especially risk in a very different way. So, do we need a legislation on parity in a government? I honestly am not against it. And I know that a lot of people say, well, but can you put rules of parity, which means it needs to be equal one side and the other side? I always say, look, parity is something we know very well in Belgian politics. Mm-hmm. We have parity in one domain, we have it everywhere, which is parity between Dutch-speaking and French-speaking. And so if you think that parity is defendable based on language, then why would parity not be defendable based on gender? I mean, I don't really see where the issue there is. I could not imagine that the next government would be, again, 15 ministers, of which 12 are men. That would actually be really a wrong choice.
So we can count on you in order to push for it?
Sure, yeah.
Make a commitment to
look,
our
and I... Sure, and I mean, I'm not here to speak pure politics, but if I just look in my own party, and you take the leaders of the different lists, we've made a tremendous step forward. Yes. And we've taken a step forward because my party president and I said, this is what we need to do. And of course, I know that then the next question asked by journalists is always, yes, you say that, but when it is about your function, will you do it? Why would I not do it? I mean, let's get away of this discussion, which is often also directed to me, is to say, well, but you are talking about this topic, but you're not the perfect example yourself. So what? I mean, this is, yes, I know I'm not the perfect example. I know I still have a long way to go, but that shouldn't stop me in making a certain argument. That is the argument that is being used against the students who are campaigning for more climate action. People will always say, well, but you've probably taken the plane as well last month. Yes, So what? Does that make my argument less valuable? No, I don't think so. And the argument of perfection is being used all the time to delay the things that we just have to do. So let's get away of this perfection argument and just get going.
Great. Saskia, can I ask you to close the session by giving us some results of the Be the Change survey of Agoria, because I think this is it's very interesting.
Yeah, so what I wanted to do is factualize the reality in the digital world. Because everybody was shouting, all the robots will eat our jobs, and what will be the famous new jobs, and what about my job? At the end of the day, it comes to that. So just before lunch, a few numbers, and ending on a positive message. For every job that would disappear in Belgium, we will create 3.7 more jobs. So we have just taken into consideration what we know today. We didn't create any assumptions to go into the future. We only assumed that we will all work until 67, so that's maybe a little bit action taken at least. Firstly. Secondly, we will still have 4.5 million people working. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is for me the biggest worry. Because in their 4.5 million, a lot of women are working. And as I'm saying, 65% of the content of the jobs will change if we are not capable of creating very fast a culture of lifelong learning in our organizations. We have a risk that we will have a lot of women losing their job, not being ready to take up other opportunities. And that's the good thing is that there is a law now being voted that for good governance we can not only focus on financial results, but we should also focus on society results. It's not really clear how it can be interpreted. But as being a board member of a few companies, it also gives me an additional argument to ask for where is your culture on lifelong learning in order to keep all active women as long as possible actively on the market. Then we will still have 310,000 employees, unemployed people, which we really need to give a full training. But even if we do that correct, you have to know that we will have 0.3 students coming from the education system. Supposing they all have all the right skills, so they all went to school 19, we need 0.9. So we have already on the inflow of young people, we do not have enough. So we need everybody actively on the market. And if we do all that correctly, we will still have 584,000 jobs not filled in. So we need to use the momentum of automating processes of yesterday where everybody is trying to push them back as fast as possible. We need to automate faster now in order to limit that amount. But the good news is, if we do all that right, then we create an additional economic value for Belgium of 95 billion euro. So the good news is there is a future for Belgium. The better news is we do not only need hard skills. We need people who dare to change. We need people who dare to be disruptive. We need people who dare to think outside of the quarters and the dividend and the next elections. We need people who can bring a virtual team together in order to bring diversity in the creativity of the ideas. We need people who create a new ecosystem and build out with new partners. And let all that be female competences. So ladies, there is a bright future in the digital transformation in which we can realize a fantastic and economic value for Belgium.
Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, be the change maker, because this is about the message. Be not only women, but men, because I'm sure you can reach the level of emotional intelligence as women have. It's only because we were trained to care for others. We were expected to do so for thousands and thousands of years, so we are pretty well trained. But man, it's your turn now to do that too. So be the change makers, and as change makers, you need to have some food in order to be full of energy for the session at 2. Bye-bye.